Hello people of the verse and welcome to the channel. It's the Eradicator, and in this video we will be talking about upcoming features that are coming this year in 2021 that are going to change planetary tech. Now before we do that, guys, this month I am giving away Cyclone MTs, one for you guys, the subscribers of this channel. All you have to do is to be a subscriber and answer the giveaway question, and one on Discord for the people who support me on Patreon or via the join button as well. Alright guys, well, there are a couple of features here on the roadmap because the roadmap was quite extensively updated this week, and a lot of features here have not really been talked about that much, so that's why we are going to do that in this video. And I really believe that they are going to change how planets are going to feel and look like by the end of this year. Now, the first feature here that I will be talking about is something called terrain modification support, and it says working with artists to support and improve the terrain modification tools, adding features to better support organic landmarks like rivers. There you have it, guys, river. Now this is going to be extremely important because right now the planets are kind of like static and it's not really easy to modify the terrain unless you use some kind of brush that the artists are going to have to do manually. But the idea with the planetary tech is that artists are going to have to do as least manual work as possible and rely on procedural generation work as much as possible. And this is exactly what this is going to do. This is going to add the procedural tech tools to allow the rivers on the planet to modify the terrain in order to make the rivers and also the roads, and we're going to talk about also later, a little bit more believable, because it is true that rivers or liquids in general do alter the terrain. They cause erosion, obviously, and that erosion caused by those rivers is going to have to be visible on the planet's surface, and this is what the terrain modification support is going to allow. And this is a feature that is going to come by the end of this year, hopefully. So yeah, it's going to be taking quite a while, but this is something that we should maybe expect for Star Citizen Alpha 3.16, right? But then, of course, to allow for that to happen, you need to create the rivers and the road tech themselves. This is a feature that is coming up in 3.15 by Q3 of 2021, but obviously will not be coming until the end of the year because they need the tech that we talked about before. So there we have it, guys, rivers and roads. This is going to be the procedural generation tech to create rivers and road placeable by artists across planet. Now this is not a feature that is coming out of the blue. They have been working on those for quite some time. I remember a long time ago, many years ago, there was already an Around the Verse episode where they did talk about a possible road tech, which unfortunately has not yet come, but this is something that players like myself who have ground vehicles are really looking for, because the problem right now with terrain with ground vehicles is that they kind of make me and also I'm not the only one, it also makes quite a few of you as well dizzy when driving those vehicles, because the terrain is a little bit bumpy, there are many rocks, and it just doesn't feel right. But when we are going to have roads, these are going to feel much more comfortable, they are going to be much more reliable items, much more reliable. It's going to be a much more reliable means to go from one point to another. We're going to need those roads, for example, to go from major places to settlements, where those settlements are maybe not necessarily too far in order to take an air vehicle like a ship, for example, those places where it wouldn't really make sense to go to the starport and then fly your ship and then go to the outpost. Maybe it would be a little bit quicker to go to, let's say, a gate of Lorville and then drive your vehicle for a couple of minutes until you finally arrive at your destination. So that's why we need roads for distances that are maybe not that long and that wouldn't make sense for an aircraft to be used. Now also this is going to be the same for rivers. It's going to be the same type of mechanic where rivers are going to be following the terrain of the terrain of a planet, and at the same time going to alter the terrain of the planet in order to make it a little bit more believable and more organic. We've seen that also in an episode of Inside Star Citizen not too long ago. Now the next one here, also coming up by the end of this year, is basins. Now basins form a critical part of water systems across planets and are home to many forms of flora and fauna. Adding them to the work-in-progress river system will further improve the quality of our planets. Now, I do believe that the first planet that is going to be considered by Basins is, of course, going to be Hurston, because there are seas and oceans on Hurston. So if there are seas and oceans on Hurston, where are the rivers that feed those seas and oceans, right? So that's why we are going to see that on Hurston for the very first time, which is why I believe that we're not done with planetary tech here. It is still going to improve over time, and I think that those rivers are going to look absolutely phenomenal and are going to make the planets look more realistic when they're finally going to come online. Now, it's very interesting to see that these rivers, those basins, are going to have their own fauna and flora, meaning it makes sense, right? Because let's say, for example, you have some rivers that are in the northern hemisphere, not far from the pole. It's obviously going to be much colder than some basins that are going to be closer to the equator, right? So you're going to have different types of vegetation based on where those basins are located, and I think that this is going to be a very interesting first test bed for future planets that are going to be maybe more terrestrial, like Terra, for example, which is one of those planets that is eagerly anticipated by players. So that's why they're going to try those techs first on Hurston, which is kind of already a terrestrial planet, very polluted, obviously, very hot, obviously, but nevertheless still has some terrains that are, similar to what we have on Earth, talking about those savanna terrains, right? So these are going to be modified, obviously, in the future, and those basins are going to be the very first test and implementation for future planets that are going to be more developed in terms of how Earth-like they are going to be. And finally, one more tech that is coming up by the end of this year, and this is terrain snow displacement, and this is going to implement the tech required for impressions in the snow where a person or vehicle impacts or travels over snowy terrain. This is obviously going to be for macrotech, but not just macrotech, because on terrestrial planets we should expect some snow in the mountains or near the poles as well, so it's probably going to affect Terra and the likes, right? And this is obviously going to be very important because it is going to leave tracks when you are walking. Obviously, let's say you are in certain depths of snow, it is going to be very visible when players are moving through these depths of snow. It's also going to make it visible when vehicles are moving in those snows as well. It's going to be, for example, fantastic for bounty hunting gameplay, where you'll be able to track your bounties based on the tracks that you see in the snow, and that is a development that I'm also really looking forward to. But please let me know in the comments down below. That is going to be the giveaway question, of course, guys. Which of these features are you waiting for the most? As far as I'm concerned, I'm waiting for those roads, because finally I'll be able to use them, those ground vehicles that are sitting in my garage and doing nothing, and we'll be able to do races as well, proper races on roads and not on bumpy terrain. When this is happening, I think that races are going to be much more interesting too. Well, that's all for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, this has been the Eradicator. I'll see you guys later. This video is brought to you by the people who support this channel on Patreon and via the join button as well. Supporters of the channel get access to lots of cool perks, such as access to my private Discord, your question answered in the show, you get to know when I'm going to play, and also you get to have a chance to influence the editorial line of the channel. Any help is appreciated, starts at just $1 a month. Thank you very much for watching. This is the Eradicator, and I'll see you guys later.